Today's lesson is on the secondary clutch and how to clock your secondary or put it back to stock, however you'd like to do it. I'm going to show you what it takes to do this, what kind of tools you need. You need a good pair of snap ring pliers. I'm sure any set will work, just a pair of snap ring pliers. And you need a clutch compressor. My tool is rather simple. Basically a piece of all-thread rod, a nut on the bottom, a nut on the top, and a lot of people use a piece of exhaust pipe and cut the front half off of it. Well, I just happen to take this piece of metal here and put it in a press and kind of make a horseshoe, and it works rather well. I'll show you how it all works. You take just any way to compress the clutch and the spring, and mine is pretty simple. I just use a vise. You clamp the bottom bolt in the vise, the bottom of the nut in the vise. You unthread your rod. You take your clutch, and I always face the snap ring towards me. Take your snap ring, face it towards you. Put your compressor through here. Take your bottom of your bolt, line it up with your nut, and screw it together. Now you're going to need a wrench or whatever for this, and I just happen to use this little handy tool here. Alright, before I go any further, you want to compress this helix just enough so that your snap ring gets loose, where you can get your snap ring pliers in and get your snap ring off. So if you'll watch, you only compress this thing about an inch. I'm sorry, a quarter of an inch. Just enough to get your snap ring off. Once your snap ring is off, you can take this thing and back it off. Sometimes they're stuck. Do it all the time. You just give it a little bump. That's all it takes, a bump. Usually the spring pressure will push it up. You take your little tool out, and now you got your secondary clutch taken apart. It's nothing to be scared of. And, none of these parts are going to go anywhere. There's nothing crazy or critical. You have an inner and outer clutch that goes together, and on the inside here you got your letters, and I'm going to draw them. You got A, which is facing out. You got B here, and you got C. I'll show you. It's just your holes. There's 3 holes. They're numbered A, B, and C. And on top of your helix, you've got 4 numbers. Let's see if we can get started with number 1. Number 1. Number 2. Here's 3. And here's 4. You see 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're numbered there. You can see them now that I've written over them. There's just a little stamp number right beside each hole. And what people refer to when they're clocking the secondary is they're taking these little pins on the secondary spring and they're putting it in the B hole. That's where it comes B1. So you have the lower pin in B and the upper pin in the number 1 hole. You'll line this up and you'll put the clutch back together. Well, when some people are clocking theirs, they'll put this thing in the B in the lower hole and they'll twist it around and say B3 or B4, or however you want it. You just line the hole up with this top pin. I'm going to show you how to put it back together at B1. Your lower pin's in B, your top pin is in the 1 position, and you can see it come through there. You can see the pin just poking through the hole. Put it back together, you slide well, you need to make sure your snap ring's on top. You got to take it back apart again. Once you get the clutch assembled, run your spring compressor back through, line it with your bolt, see it, there's a keyway cut in this shaft. Turn it where you can. There's a keyway cut in this shaft, and there is also a piece of key stock in the upper part of this helix. There's a keyway cut in the helix as well. You need to line them up and put them back together. In order for me to do it, the easiest way I found is to face the keyway away from you on the clutch. And if you watch, the top part of the clutch doesn't move the keyway. It's the bottom part of the clutch that the shaft's attached to turns the keyway. So I always turn the clutch where the keyway is facing away from me, and then I also line the keyway and the helix up away from me. And you can turn the top helix, and since the pins are in the spring, it also turns the top of the clutch. Line the helix keyway and the clutch keyway up, and that's going to put the snap ring notch right facing towards you in front of your face. That way you can see it the easiest, because that's about the most important part, is getting that snap ring back on. So you'll take and compress your clutch. Now before it goes all the way down, if you're using a sponge or a socket to do this, it's really easy. You go slow enough where you can watch what you're doing, but you need to turn the upper and lower halves of these clutch to line your keyway up. And when it's going together, you'll see it. You'll be able to look. You'll be able to look through it, and you can see the keyway lining up. And as the clutch lines up, you can go on and compress it all the way down. And I am just about perfect here on this one, ready to go back down. I'm gonna try it and get it over here where I can show you. If you look right in here past this spring, you can see the key stop right around here. And if you look down there, you see daylight. You can see where I've got the keyway lined up. I'm gonna turn this clutch, see if it takes the daylight out. See how you see almost where the key stock's got to go, and there it's lined up right now. So you can see through this clutch. You can see where the keyway lines up. Make sure that's lined up before you put it back together, or otherwise it'll push your key stock out and it'll get you in a bind. Alright, now that everything's lined up, you can go on and compress it back all the way down. And sometimes you're going to have to hold this thing at just the right angle. You can see daylight around this helix. If you see around it in any way around it, then it's not quite lined up. The helix will be sitting at an angle to the shaft. The shaft straight up and down, and if your helix is going in at an angle, it won't go on all the way. So, you're just going to have to take your time and put this thing back together slow if it's your first time. Make sure everything's lined up. That's where a wrench really helps it, because you can turn it real slow and get this thing lined up just right. But you can go on and compress it all the way down. Now once you got your keyway in there, now the keyway's in the slot and it's down. The helix is starting to go down on the shaft, but you're going to need to line your shoe up with the helix. And this is at B1, so you've got to turn it about 30 degrees to get this shoe behind, the helix behind the shoe, excuse me. And it's really simple, it's not that hard. Since the upper part of the clutch and the helix are fixed together with that spring, you've got to actually twist and you tighten the spring up, putting a load on the spring in order to get the shoe over on this side of the helix where it's supposed to be. And all you do is, it's really simple. I take and hold the clutch with the bottom of my hand, put my fingers on these fins, then I'll take the upper part of the clutch and twist it and clamp it with my hand there, and then run the clutch all the way down. And there it is. And then you can throw your snap ring back on. If you're at B2 or B3, you'll have to spin the spring around even further. You'll have to go on around 30 or 40 degrees, or likewise, however far it's got to go. To get your helix over on this side of the shoe, you'll notice the helix will have a weared section, and then your shoe will have a little flat spot on them usually. You want to be sure to get it lined up with the right one. You can't put it on the opposite side, otherwise the clutch won't work right. So put it back the way it came. If you have to, mark it before you do it. But you get your clutch compressed all the way down to where, just like it was when you took it apart, you need to have just enough of this lip showing that your snap ring will go back on. And once you get it down far enough, you just put your snap ring back on there and line it up with the way it's supposed to be. You can pull your spring compressor back off. And there's your clutch. Now I did put this one back at B1, which you can see the spring. You can go to 2 or 3 or 4, however you like. And I'll show you. Here is a graph that shows you what the spring tensions are. At B1, you've obviously got less spring compression than at all the other positions. You can do it at A2 or A4 or B3 or C1 or however you like in order to get the certain amount of spring tension added to the clutch to get your back shift.